What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of the live little show. We're getting going a little bit delayed here, getting some of this technical thing set up, but we're really excited to get this project going. Been working on it for a little bit. We got it rolling here in 2019, and so couldn't think of a better guest to have today than Lawton Swann from Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Lawton, really happy to have you here. You know, it's sure to be a little bit interesting on the other end of this, being the one maybe interviewing, not getting interviewed. So got one professional at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different side of the coin for sure. I mean, I get used to asking a lot of questions, and every once in a while I'll get fortunate enough to be interviewed, but I'm excited about giving it a shot here with you.
Thanks, Lawton. Appreciate you being here. Lawton, can you talk to us a little bit about your origin story? Lawton Swann, maybe growing up in Barnwell. I know you're a proud Warhorse graduate. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was growing up, there was a lot of vibrance with the textile industry in our town, and there was so much going on in that respect. You had Savannah River site, and people were moving into the area. And I look back on it. I don't think, not having lived anywhere else, that I realized what Barnwell did or didn't have by comparison to maybe bigger communities. I mean, it was normal to drive an hour to go shopping in Augusta, an hour to go shopping in Columbia. But that's just kind of the way it was, and it made those events special. But it certainly didn't change how I felt about my town by any means. I mean, I always loved Barnwell, but once you kind of get out and see that, man, there's more than one McDonald's in the town, or there's more stuff. It's kind of eye-opening to think about what I used to view as like normal versus what I view as normal now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Talk to us a little bit about, being in high school. What were you involved in? Any sports, anything like that? I know you graduated in '95 from Barnwell. There were some great football teams then, some good basketball teams. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I certainly wasn't in the Beta Club or the National Honor Society, I can assure you on that front. But, I was involved in the local community theater there, Circle Theater, and I had a lot of fun with that. Played basketball and ran cross country. And, I played football up until I got to high school. And then I realized I was probably going to get killed out on the football field playing defensive back. And, maybe I could have given that a shot. I had chances to play soccer, but really basketball is my love. And that's kind of, what I did. We didn't have theater in the school, so my parents were both involved in that. And, I just kind of found that as a good way to get out and express a little bit more. I don't know if it's like to be different characters or what, but there was always something special about going on stage and performing for people and knowing that people enjoyed the work that you put in. I think that sometimes like theater work and things like that can be underappreciated, but the reality is to be able to go out there live on the stage and entertain people is something that unfortunately, I think is lost amongst a lot of people. People don't want to get up and do karaoke. People don't want to, maybe at a dinner party to tell a joke. They're just too afraid to really reach out and really stress themselves a little bit in that respect. And I think that that's one of the things that's really helped me with my career in radio is the time I spent doing those things. I mean, it's great that I was, an athlete and athletic enough to play sports, but I think where I really thrive is in that quick-witted moment, sort of a whose line is it anyway type environment and just entertaining.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's an important point maybe to drive home is how that experience in theater, doing things like that, has helped you now as your career progressed. I think a lot of people in high school, maybe they want to focus on sports and athletics, but some of those other things certainly can be beneficial And talk a little bit more about how, obviously, you've never met a stranger. Anywhere you go, you're a very outgoing guy. But, do you really think that doing some of that theater, I know, obviously, of the mind, I believe, in high school, some karaoke in your days in Tiger Town, do you really think that's helped you a lot in your radio career?
I think so. There's something, I don't know. It's a little bit of a rush that I get when I know that people are entertained. Whether you're talking about conversations that we're having at a tailgate to, just quick little one-liners from time to time. And I don't know really where that comes from, or even the comfort in doing that. It's just something that I think I've always kind of had in me, whether, when I was a school teacher and I was in the classroom every day. I would say this: if you could take the talent of the teachers in our society and allow them the freedom to do a career perhaps in acting and stage, man, there's so many talented people in that profession, and they put on a 6-8 hour show every day with no rehearsal, no dry runs, and you have to go on the fly all the time. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that I see, from teachers in the classroom, is that same kind of personality, that, vivacious spirit that kind of brings kids to love learning. And, I think it's because of that role that, teachers serve in our society. That's really something that, I'm still proud that I did at one time as a major part of my life, being a fourth grade teacher. But to still see what goes on in those classrooms is pretty incredible.
Definitely. I think that's one huge benefit of social media. You may see all these cool videos that go out with these teachers, maybe with the handshake with students and things like that. And it kind of can expand people's creativity, be able to reach people and see the positive things that really are in all of us, especially those that educate and are really bringing up that future generation. Lawton, talk to us a little bit about, how did you get started with Clemson Sports Talk? Did you major in some sort of communication when you went to Clemson, or how did that get going for you?
It's funny. My dad had been in radio a little bit when he was younger, and it wasn't like around the house, hey son, you're gonna go into the radio industry and this, that. My dad was in education, and I went to grad school in Columbia, South Carolina, and being a Clemson guy, when I got down here, up in the upstate, you had WCCP, which is still the Clemson's radio station up there on 105.5 The Roar. Back then, it was a different frequency, but the same deal. I mean, it was Clemson coverage all day long. And so after I graduated from Clemson, I moved to Columbia, and there really wasn't a sports radio scene. The station that's here now, 107.5 The Game, didn't exist. So that was kind of South Carolina's station that kind of came on board about the time I got down here. They had an ESPN affiliate. They had a Fox, or wasn't a Fox Sports. I can't remember what it was. It doesn't matter. But I didn't feel like Clemson people had a voice, and we didn't have mobile phones where you could stream everything. Podcasting was kind of starting to come, into its own, but you had to plug in your iPhone, or you had to plug in your iPod or whatever to get those episodes. It wasn't nearly as easy as it is now to access it. But I just felt like there was a market of Clemson fans out there that would appreciate a show about the Tigers. I felt like podcasting was something that people would eventually embrace, and they have, by the millions, maybe even the billions. I mean, listeners of podcasts and shows like yours, are on the rise. And that's something they talk with us about now, kind of transitioning a little bit forward. My show ends up getting picked up by iHeart, and I do the show at iHeartRadio on a radio station, Fox Sports Radio 1400. We've been syndicated into Myrtle Beach. But the thing about it is that this avenue, one, opens up doors for people who don't have a degree, who maybe have a passion for something. And number two, the financial burden at one time of getting into doing anything like this would have been way too much. But now, I mean, if you like crocheting, you can host a show about crocheting. If you like a football franchise, you can host a show about a football franchise. If you're it doesn't matter, whatever. And I think that's the beauty of it all. But it was kind of a cutting edge thing at the time, and I was one of the first people in. when we started the show I was on, that I started up, was like one of the top 10 sports podcasts in iTunes. And
Wow.
because nobody was doing it, you know. I mean, listen, if you were the first guy, you were number one. But it's just incredible to think, you know, 15 years later, still doing it in some capacity, because we still podcast the show every night after we do it. But yeah, it was just one of those things where you roll the dice, and what did I have to lose? You know what I mean? What's the worst thing that was going to happen? Nobody was going to listen. I mean, that's the worst thing that can happen, you know?
Exactly.
So yeah, it's just worked out. I mean, I remember there's an old saying, you always miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I know you're a shooter, so you'll understand that reference. Yeah. So, you know, I just decided, what the heck, man, I'll swing. And if I strike out, I strike out. And if I hit a home run, that's great. I feel like I'm probably batting about 275 and still trying to get that home run done, but that's part of the grind.
Hey, exactly. Well, you know, a lot of times with singles and grinding it out, you know, is better than a home run. And like you said, I'm definitely a shooter, so I appreciate that reference. Now, Lawton, talk to us about when you're obviously passionate about Clemson football, Clemson sports, interested in maybe getting into podcasting, things like that. Did you keep your day job? Did you stay in school? What did you do? Talk to us a little bit about that. What was your day-to-day getting started?
So when the podcast first started, I did one show a week for 1 hour. And that was more than I needed. It was actually the first episode ever of a show called Tiger Net Talk.
Okay.
Somehow found its way to archive.org. And that's like the archive of the internet. So if you're ever interested in hearing the worst 17 minutes, and it was my first 17 minutes, it's out there. It still exists. And it haunts me when I go listen to it. I'm like, first off, back then you couldn't upload stuff. I mean, like, to upload a file that was 50 megabytes was unheard of. I mean, it was unheard of. Like, how are you going to send this to us? So you had to compress everything really small. And I did it just, you know, like I said, once a week, and it kind of grew to be about an hour show. That first show was just kind of a dry run, or whatever you want to call it. And then I ended up getting a call from a guy in Mississippi, John Rawl, and wanted me to do a show called Clemson Hotline. And so that was another hour added in. It's kind of a separate show I did on a different night. And then that kind of turned into a 2-hour daily show called Y'all Sports Daily that was kind of syndicated across the Southeast. And really, it was a tape-delayed show that played in a bunch of different markets. And that took a couple hours every night. So it kind of started to progress. Now, I never gave up the day job. I was still working in schools and still am to this day. But, yeah, I just have it now where at the end of my school day, you know, 3 o'clock, 3:15, I leave there. My radio show starts at 4, drive across town, do the radio show, and I'm home at, you know, 6:20 or so, which is pretty normal. The show used to be from 6 to 8. So I'd get home pretty late then, but I definitely like the new hours of the program, and it makes it a lot easier for me to, you know, to do some dad things like going to basketball practice or going to gymnastics practice or whatever you can squeeze in to a day with your kids.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really important kind of story to share with everybody, that you can see all of your followers on Twitter, you know, the great website that you have now, all of your followers on Facebook, you know, you get the press passes to national championship games. But really, what I've admired about what you've done, seeing you really from the start, is the work that you put in, and that, you know, things don't necessarily happen quickly, but you stick with it. You know, you work a job in doing this and just staying after, staying steady after. A lot of times people see maybe some of the benefits, but they don't see all the work that you put in, the years that have happened. So I think that's a good story to share for people, especially with, like what you're saying now, with social media, with the internet, as it's kind of progressed. I mean, people can really do that if they're passionate about it and, you know, work day to day in and out like that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, I always had this philosophy to be bigger than you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and fake it till you make it was another thing that I would do. You know, I never will forget that I didn't have commercials originally. I mean, I didn't have a single commercial. And so I was like, man, I got to figure something out. I just need a break from talking. So like I'm running some commercials, you know, just kind of random. I wouldn't call them fake commercials, but they certainly weren't nobody was paying me for commercials.
Right.
And then it wasn't a week or two later, I get emails, you know, hey, how can I advertise on your show? You know, and so it's just one of those things where it's kind of like, wow. It's kind of not really too difficult to figure out, but once you figure out that could work, kind of takes things up to the next level. But yeah, man, I mean, whether you're using things like if this, then that, you know, send things through your Twitter and your Instagram and your Facebook, and, you know, something that some companies don't know about or some people don't use, and, you know, they're posting things on multiple channels, you know, at different times or whatever.
Right.
It's something I think that, you know, one man or just a couple of people can appear to be a lot bigger than they really are.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially if you're as technologically savvy as you are. I think you're always ahead of the curve there. We got a comment here from Garnett to talk about how you got Danny Ford on your first show.
So this would have been on, I think, my first show on the radio when I got picked up over at iHeart. And so my dad was the principal at the high school, and Mac Ware was the head football coach for
Barnwell High School,
probably,
right?
Yeah, Barnwell High School for probably 18, 19 years, somewhere in there. He was the head football coach there. Well, his son, Billy, I grew up with Johnny and Billy. They were just a little bit younger than me, but his son, Billy, did some work for Danny Ford up at Clemson. And, of course, Danny Ford, before Dabo Swinney, was the greatest Clemson head football coach. And maybe some people are still holding on to Danny Ford as the greatest. I think he may have been surpassed a little less than a week ago when Dabo picked up his second national championship in pretty much everybody's eyes. But Billy had worked for Danny, and so, you know, when you're coming on the air, you want to have like a big guest. You want to really like bust through the door and be like, boom, hey, kind of like this show. You know, big guest.
On the air. Hey.
Yeah, you want to kick down the door, right? Exactly. So we I talked to Billy. Billy said, yeah, I can get you in touch with him. Talked to Coach Ford. Coach Ford came on, and really, I mean, that really jump started the show. You know, it really kind of gave us something to back what we were doing, so that people go, oh man, well, if this guy's got Danny Ford on day one, what's to come? You know, and we've had the executive director of the college football playoff, Bill Hancock, on. We have Tommy Bowden on every week, and you know, for any Clemson person out there that's listening to this, let me tell you, we need at Clemson a day to celebrate Tommy Bowden. He didn't achieve the goals he set out to achieve, but that man is still so invested and still loves the Clemson community. Even though things didn't end the way he would have liked, he's as proud of Dabo Swinney as anybody. And I can't wait for the day that Clemson brings him back in. And I think there are a lot of people out there that don't appreciate how much he did for the program, from facilities to changing the culture and getting this thing headed in the right direction. I know that what Clemson's done now has a lot to do with Dabo Swinney, and maybe everything to do with Dabo Swinney. But the guy that brought him there was Tommy Bowden.
Right. No, I think that's an important point. It's never really one guy or one girl, anything like that gets anything done. You know, you got to build on foundations. And certainly that kind of after Tommy Bowden's been gone, it's really interesting to hear you say that. I think it's not something you hear a lot from Clemson fans, frankly, anybody talking Clemson football.
No, it's true. And you know, Bowden still is a part of a show called ACC Blitz. I think it used to be called ACC Live on Saturdays. And because Clemson has been so good, oddly enough, he's not really involved in any of Clemson's games. They rarely play on the old Raycom television network like they used to. I remember when that's the only place you could catch them. Now the Tigers have been so good, they're always on ESPN or ABC and typically playing in a good primetime slot.
Right. Yeah. Well, talk to us about the national championship game.
Woo, man. It was a long trip, that's for sure. I don't know that the Santa Clara area was the best in terms of logistics for everybody to get there from Tuscaloosa and Clemson, but the venue was gorgeous. Levi Stadium was incredible. But I don't know if there was a bad seat in the house for the game. Obviously, when's the last time you saw Alabama fans leave a game in the third quarter because they were the ones just getting crushed? I mean, that was impressive. But, you know, the reality is those are two very good teams and by far the best two teams in the country. And so, you know, the thing that I tried to tell my son was, because both teams were 14-0, one team was going to come out there, the first team to be undefeated since 1897, right. 15-0 undefeated since 1897. The other was going to be a very good 14-1 team, whether they got beat by 1 or 100. And, you know, you try to prepare yourself for that because if you're a Clemson graduate, you certainly don't want to diminish what these guys accomplished if they get beat. I mean, if Clemson had lost, they were 54-5 during their careers. That's not a bad record by any means, with a national title. And so you wanted to really prepare yourself for recognizing the accomplishment, not necessarily the fact that you hoisted a national championship or didn't. And, you know, you heard Dabo Swinney and several of the players yesterday kind of reflecting that, saying, look, this is a moment when you win it. It's a moment, but it's really about the journey. You know, it's about the journey with the guys. Whether they won or lost that title, that doesn't change anything else that went into that year outside of that one little incident of bringing home the championship. And, you know, I think that sometimes we are focused so much on winning, when the reality is, what are you putting into the work that you're doing? What are you putting in day to day to be a better person, to treat people the right way? And to, you know, if you're on a team like that, to build that camaraderie and that relationship where you trust the person absolutely next to you to do their job, and you don't have to feel like you're micromanaging anybody. And I think that's why you see Brent Venables and Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott content with being assistants at Clemson, because they're not being micromanaged by somebody who's, you know, nitpicking every single thing that they do. These guys are allowed the freedom to run their systems the way they want to. And I think that happiness and that satisfaction in their job is part of the reason that Clemson's been as successful as they have been.
Certainly. That's great insight there. So, Lawton, how do people listen to you? I know you've got ClemsonSportsTalk.com, iHeartRadio. Tell us a little bit about how people can listen to your shows.
Well, it's obviously on iHeart, and here in Columbia, it's on Fox Sports Radio 1400 on your radio dial. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, do you still do that podcast?" Yeah, I'm like, look, it's a little more intense than that now. I mean, it's a daily radio show. So if you're in the car and you're in the area, you can put on the AM dial. That still exists, and we're on 1400 AM. And if the airwaves and frequencies, you know, in the atmosphere are right, you can pick it up pretty far. But most of the time, it's really just a Richland County, Lexington County show. iHeartRadio, you can listen, you know, on your phone. You can go to our website, ClemsonSportsTalk.com. We've got live streams on Facebook. My belief is to you put yourself, like the old way would have been, you're only on the radio and we're going to limit the advertising to that. And, you know, that's because our advertisers are demanding that, you know, you tune in there. But I think the reality is, for advertisers, it's better if there's more inclusion, if there are more ways for people to consume it. And if people begin to consume your show on the live stream on Facebook, and then they eventually become a listener of Fox Sports Radio 1400, that's good for everybody. And so that's kind of been the thing I've always done, is I feel like if you just put it out there to more people and give people more ways to consume your product, the odds are they're going to come back when they get a chance. And I think that's healthy for iHeart. It's healthy for my show. It's healthy for everybody because it gives you access. And then those podcasts are free and available to listen in when you want to listen. You want to listen while you're mowing the grass, you can. You want to listen while you're out by the pool, you can. You miss a week, you want to catch up, you can. So, you know, we really try to make sure that we give you every opportunity to be a part of the show.
Oh, yeah, definitely keeping it frictionless, where people can, if they're on Facebook, they can pull it up, Instagram, they can listen, podcast. You know, you do a great job of putting it out on multiple platforms. I also really appreciate what you do with kind of behind the scenes things, you know, about maybe traveling out to Santa Clara, some things like that really, really are cool at what you do. And I certainly love following you. Let me ask you one more question because of your Barnwell background. What's your best memory from Barnwell? Growing up in Barnwell, what's your best memories of playing basketball? Did you play basketball at Floyd Park a lot? Were you the mascot, the horse?
I did. Yeah, I did that. My best memory from Barnwell. Man, that's a tough one. I mean, because I got a lot of good ones. It's not like it's like how am I gonna pick just one? So a couple of things. One, back then everybody would drive around the circle and down to McDonald's and back around the circle. Like cruising was the thing to do. Gas is like 89 cents a gallon. Nobody's parents are like, oh, gas is too expensive to cruise. You didn't have the internet, so nobody was staying at home doing anything. You couldn't play video games online. I mean, none of this, like the stuff that keeps kids in the house now did not exist. You know what I mean? Like you hear parents all the time say, go outside and play, go outside and play. And that's true, but we had to go outside. So there's nothing else to do. So you grew up with that, like being the thing to do, go to McDonald's and do that. So that's one. And number two, I never will forget. And I saw Joey Still was in here. He'll remember this. We would go after school almost every single day, and we would ride over to Richie Tyner's house over in Meadowbrook. And Richie's dad had set up like a basketball goal, like a slam dunk goal. You got the adjustable goals back then. Those kind of came in when we were younger. And it was on a railroad tie. I mean, it was in the ground. You were not going to wreck this thing. And there was a shed. So it had like a 10 by 10 or a 12 by 12 slab concrete. There was a shed on one side. And so you could throw the basketball off of the shed, and then you could catch it on the other side of the rim. And so we play like 2-on-2, and you could dunk it. So we play like 2-on-2 basketball all day after school. And what's crazy is because we were varsity basketball players, most of us that were out there, you do that to like 5 or 6, and then you drive back over to the high school, and then you'd have basketball practice. Now I see Joey saying he dominated. I don't know if that's the case, by the way. I saw his daughter on Twitter though today, dominating the softball. Dominating the softball. Holy cow. But I will say that doing that every day, and Richie's dad had a tractor. I'm not a country guy. Like I don't hunt, I don't fish. I mean, I've never hunted. I have fished. But I'd never driven a tractor until those days. And so I'd fire that tractor up while my team wasn't playing, and I'd drive it around the little side yard over there. And, that was the thing, man. It was such a tight-knit community. Like Joey's a little bit older than me and a year older than me. And because of that, I mean, if you were in high school together, you knew everybody in high school. Let me tell you the beauty of Barnwell. This is the beauty once you leave. This is what I love about it. When you're growing up, playing Little League football, you were a Colt, you were a Stallion, you were a Mustang. Those are your choices. And that was because we had so many kids go out to play football, they had to split us up. Like at one time it was just the Colts, but then Barnwell football was doing good. Everybody wanted to play. So they had to create like multiple teams from Barnwell. Then you go to middle school, you're a war pony. Then you go to high school and you're a war horse. Man, where I live, no schools are the same. The kids you're in class with now are probably going to be the kids you're playing football or basketball or whatever against later. I don't feel that same level. Like Lexington's a town where everybody from Lexington will say, oh, yeah, we love each other here. Yeah, but you're a River Bluff fan. You're a Lexington fan. You're a White Knoll fan. Dude, in Barnwell, you're a Barnwell fan. And when you're a kid, you're a Barnwell fan. And the colors are red, black, and white. And that, for me, was the thing that I see the biggest difference. When you go to the grocery store in Barnwell, you know everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knows you. When you go to the pharmacy, everybody knows you. When you go to church, everybody knows you. Man, kids behaved when I was in school because the teachers were your parents' friends. Like you weren't going to get out of line because you knew that Miss Lemon knew who your parents were. They were friends. Here, nobody knows anybody. Like nobody knows anybody. And so that's the thing that's, I think, the biggest difference. It's still the beautiful thing about growing up in the town that size is that no matter where you go, heck, I haven't lived there in 20 plus years, but because my dad was the principal, if I go to the store or go out to eat, somebody's like, there's little Reed, Mr. Swann, how you doing? And I mean, that's Barnwell in a nutshell. I haven't been there in 20 years, and people still know who I am if I go there. And it's not because I do some radio show in Columbia. It's because I went to high school there in the 90s.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I tell you what, I think that's haven't heard it said any better than that. About what a special place Barnwell is and kind of encompassing all of that. I tell you, I know you were at the state championship game this year, and it's amazing how the town is shut down. Right, everybody knows the players, knows their parents, knows everybody, and just what a family community that it is. Certainly is a special place. And I know that I'm certainly proud of you being your nephew. For anybody who's listening, wondering how I got some of that inside info, been following in my footsteps since I was born. So certainly, I know our family is super proud of what you've done, Lawton. I know the Barnwell community is proud of what you've done. And it looks like I lost you there. We're back. Little technical difficulties there, but just wanted to tell you, Lawton, how proud I know the Barnwell community is of you. I certainly am of you for what you've done in Clemson Sports Talk, with what you've done as an educator, but really more so what you've just done as you've role model for a lot of people. You're obviously out there on social media, out there on the radio a lot. So just want to tell you how much that I personally appreciate that, kind of the positive energy that you bring to the world. So keep it up. Really appreciate you being on the show. It was great. I know we had a lot of comments here, so thank you to everybody who commented. It's a little bit difficult for me to get down the comment and the show, so I'll get a little better at that. We go. But thanks again all for being on. Thank you to everybody who was listening tonight. Have a great night, a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Juan.